Welcome to Socrates Beyond Time, a place where I share stories inspired by the thought-provoking spirit of the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates through slow, deep, and contemplative dialogues. In the series Socrates and the Masters of Persuasion, Socrates journeys across time to meet influential figures throughout history, engaging them in conversations that explore the true nature of persuasion, not merely as a technique, but as a way human beings connect with one another. Though these encounters are fictional, the spirit of Socrates and the insights revealed in each dialogue carry a timeless value, inviting us to reflect on how we think, speak, and influence others. If you'd like to explore this journey more deeply, you're warmly invited to visit socratesbeyondtime.blogspot.com, where these reflections continue, quietly yet meaningfully. There are encounters that do not merely raise questions, but reorganize the world of answers. When Socrates meets Aristotle, the dialogue no longer flows freely like a stream of thought, but begins to take shape, into structure, into principles, into a map of how human beings influence one another. One believes that truth is revealed through relentless questioning. One believes that truth must also be organized, lest it be lost in chaos. Between them, there is no opposition, but a subtle transition. Will understanding the mechanics of persuasion bring people closer to the truth, or simply make them more skillful at drifting away from it? Athens, 4th century BCE. The city still believed in the power of words in the public square. Politics was decided through speeches. Honor was defended through open argument. Whoever spoke more convincingly could guide the crowd. The order of the time regarded persuasion as an inborn talent. Some people were born eloquent. Some knew how to stir emotions. Some won through sharp reasoning. But all of it remained an elusive art, half instinct, half intuition. In this environment, a former student of Plato was dissatisfied with such vagueness. He did not only want to speak well, he wanted to understand why words could move human beings. What distinguished him was not his voice or his posture, but his desire to classify what had always been considered natural. In the gardens of the Lyceum, he began drawing connections, the credibility of the speaker, the emotions of the listener, the structure of the argument, ethos, pathos, logos, not to manipulate, but to clarify, to place the art of persuasion within the order of thought. Once these three elements were named, what had once been scattered intuition became a structure, something that could be studied, taught, and passed on. Persuasion was no longer merely a gift, it became a foundation. A quiet transformation unfolded. Words did not lose their power, but that power now had a form. Socrates stood beneath the shadow of a stone column, listening to the former student. He did not interrupt. He observed how an art could be dissected without having its soul removed. And he wondered, when persuasion is broken into parts so that it may be better understood, do human beings move closer to truth or merely closer to the ability to influence one another with greater subtlety?
When did you arrive, teacher? From the moment you began arranging words into straight lines.
Aristotle smiled.
I fear the chaos of speech. It is too easy for it to lead people astray. And you believe that if we understand its structure, we may use words without betraying humanity. Not believe, I am observing.
He bent down and drew 3 circles in the sand.
You once asked, "What causes human beings to be persuaded?" I did not search for the answer in a single thing. Not reason alone, not emotion alone, not character alone, but the meeting of all three.
Socrates lowered his gaze to the circles.
Tell me, before words are heard, the speaker is judged, not by argument, but by who they are. If the speaker is not trustworthy, their words, even if true, fall into emptiness.
So ethics does not stand outside persuasion.
No, it stands at the entrance.
Socrates nodded slowly.
You have preserved what the sophists forgot.
Aristotle drew the second circle.
Human beings are not machines of reason. They feel before they understand. They resonate before they analyze. To ignore emotion is to speak to only half of a person.
But stirring emotion can make them blind.
Yes, and that is the dangerous boundary. Pathos is not manipulation. It is the recognition that humans have hearts. Without naming emotion, reason speaks in an empty room.
Socrates remained silent for a moment.
You are trying to keep emotion from rising to rule.
Yes, emotion must be guided, not unleashed.
Aristotle drew the final circle.
And here, reason, not to display intelligence, but to build a bridge between what people feel and what they ought to believe. Without logos, persuasion is only a wave.
Socrates looked at the three circles, overlapping at their center.
You chose none of them alone.
Because choosing one betrays the other two.
A student stepped closer, yet did not dare interrupt. The air was so quiet that even the sound of leaves touching the ground could be heard.
You are doing something dangerous.
I know.
You are giving the world a map of persuasion. That map may help people speak truth more clearly, or lie more effectively.
Aristotle looked directly at Socrates.
You once taught that knowledge is never innocent, but ignorance is even more dangerous.
Socrates smiled faintly.
So you choose the risk of light over the darkness of instinct.
I believe that when people understand the structure of influence, they gain the chance to take responsibility for their words.
Socrates stood. He looked around the garden. Young students, slow footsteps, questions not yet fully formed.
If one day people use ethos to create a mask, pathos to manipulate, logos to justify, then the fault does not lie in the structure, but in the choice.
Aristotle nodded.
Persuasion, in the end, is not the art of making others obey. It is the art of not harming the truth while seeking to be heard.
Socrates placed a hand on Aristotle's shoulder.
You have brought persuasion from chaos into order. Remember this, order is not meant to control people, but to keep them from losing themselves when they speak.
The sunlight climbed higher. Shadows grew shorter. The students dispersed, carrying with them not answers, but a framework for thought. Socrates walked away slowly, leaving Aristotle standing in the garden. For the first time in history, the art of persuasion was no longer the secret craft of the victor, but a foundation that could be learned and held accountable. Aristotle did not teach people how to speak more beautifully. He taught them to understand which part of the human being they are using to influence another. Ethos, when we borrow the authority of our own character. Pathos, when we touch the listener's heart. Logos, when we guide them through reason. These three pillars, after more than 2,000 years, still stand. Not because they are powerful, but because they remind humanity that every act of persuasion is a moral act, whether the speaker admits it or not. And from that quiet morning in the garden, persuasion entered a new era, no longer the game of instinct, but the responsibility of intelligence.